Hello student, in this video I am going to revisit a usual topic that is very important in case of system analysis and design, that is use case diagram. Whenever we try to design any software, any application, or whenever we're going to develop any software and application, we always try to understand the or try to depict the use cases. So what is use case diagram? We'll try to revisit the thing in this video. So what is a use case? A formal way of representing how business system interacts with its environment. A formal way of representing how a business system interacts with its environment illustrates the activities that are performed by the users of the system. A scenario-based technique in the UML. So this is use case diagram is a part of unified modeling language, which is used to describe how your business system will interact with the environment. Or we can say a sequence of actions a system performs that yields a valuable result for a particular actor. So use case is also a type of depiction of sequence of actions a system performs which yields valuable results for a particular actor. So that use case diagram is very much connected with the actor. Actor is nothing but the environment with which system interacts. What is an actor? A user or outside system that interacts with the system being designed in order to obtain some value from that interaction. So very important definition of actor. It is basically a user or outside system that interacts with the system and being designed that communication and that relationship is designed in order to obtain some value from that interaction, and that obtaining of the value for the system also, or maybe for the actor also. Use cases describes scenario that describe the interactions between users of the system and the system itself. So use case diagrams describes what a system does from the standpoint of an external observer. So whenever you are trying to draw a use case diagram, you need to be an external observer like the system analyst, which describes what a system does. So you need to describe what the system will do, the emphasis on what a system does rather than how. So using the use case diagram, we are not describing how the system will work, but what it will work will obviously give importance. Use case diagrams are closely connected to scenarios. So a scenario is an example of what happens when someone interacts with the system. Here that someone is the actor. When someone or the actor interacts with the system, then what happens? That is a scenario, and that is described in a use case diagram. Not about how that system will work when someone or actor will interact with the system. Suppose here is one scenario. A patient calls the clinic to make an appointment for a yearly checkup. The receptionist finds the nearest empty time slot in the appointment book and schedules the appointment for that time slot. So now we want to write a use case for this scenario. Remember, a use case is a summary of scenarios for a single task or goal. So in a use case, there should not be multiple goals. A use case is a summary of the scenario. Here, in this scenario, ultimate goal is to book that patient or book an appointment for that patient. Now that is the only goal or only task. But how, what the system will work, not about how. So use case is a summary. So use case will depict that summary of this scenario for a single task or goal. So we'll see the example in very briefly, or step 1. So in this scenario we need to find the actors, identify the actors. As we read the scenario, define those people or systems that are going to interact with the scenario. Here you can obviously see the patient is one actor, and again the receptionist another actor, because that is interacting with the booking process of the appointment. So we need to find the actors first. That is the step 1. We need to find the actors by analyzing the scenario, and those peoples or systems that are going to interact with the scenario, we need to identify those actors. Questions for identifying people actors. So point is that to identify the actor, we need to understand some questions. Here, who is interested in the scenario? Who is more interested with the scenario or the system, whatever may be? Where in the organization is the scenario system be used? That is also important point. Where, in which part that scenario or that specific movement or that specific system will work? Who will benefit from the use of this scenario of the system? Who will get benefit? Who will supply the scenario or system with this information, use this information and remove this information? Means who will handle the information management system? Does one person play several different roles, or do several people play the same role? So these are the very important questions to identify the single actors, multiple actors, or the types of actors. That is why whenever you try to design a use case diagram, try to understand or try to use these questions to find out the actors in that scenario, in that specific scenario, or in the specific moment of the system. Again, a few more questions. What other entity is interested in the scenario or system? What other entity will supply the scenario or the system with this information, or use this information and remove this information? Does the system use an external resource? Does the system interact with the legacy system? So there are various questions that you can ask to identify the actors, and very important in case of use case diagram. So first, this how we can define the actors or how we can depict the actors. So actor is outside or external to the system. It can be human, it can be peripheral device, external system or subsystem, time or time-based event, and represented by a stick figure. So that is how we depict those actors. And it can be human, it can be peripheral devices, external systems might be also, subsystem might be also, or some events which are time-based, periodic events. Those might be actors to any scenarios or any system in case of information system design and analysis. An actor is always the outside for the system. So use case is a summary of scenarios for a single task or goals. So an actor is who or what initiates the events involved in the task of the use case. Actors are simply roles that people or objects play. So as we read our scenario, what or who is the actor? So here in this scenario, if we read this scenario again, a patient called the clinic to make an appointment for a yearly checkup. The receptionist finds the nearest empty time slot in the appointment book and schedules the appointment for the time slot. So now our actor, we can see that patient is one actor. After reading this scenario, use case is a summary of scenarios for a single task or goal. What is the use case? So what is the use case? Use case is the make appointment. So our goal in this scenario is that book appointment, or you can say make appointment. It is a use case for the medical clinic. It is a use case for the medical clinic, and our goal is make appointment. So that is the use case in our scenario, which is the summary of the scenario. So the picture below is a make appointment use case for the medical clinic. Okay, and the actor is the patient. Actor is the patient. This is the communication. This is the use case. Actor is the patient. The connection between the actor and the use case is a communication association, or communications for short. Actors are stick figures. Use cases are ovals. Communications are the lines that link actors to the use cases. Try to remember this very basic conventions, how we depict the use case and actors, and how we can describe the link or communication association. The use case has three components. As we see in the previous slides, one is the actor, one is the use case, and most important one is the communication. So use case task referred to as the use case that represent a feature needed in a software system. So use case there might be lots of features in a single software. So there might be lots of use cases including different features. So use case task referred to as the use case that represent the features needed in a software system. The actors who trigger a use case to activate. So here one actor or many actors who trigger the use cases to activate. The communication line to show how the actors communicate with the use case. So communication line is about how to show the actors, or how the actor will communicate with the use case. A major process performed by the system that benefits an actor in some way. A major process performed by the system that benefits an actor in some way. Models a dialogue between an actor and the system. Represent the functionality provided by the system. So the communication is also a major process performed by the system that benefits an actor in some way. Models a dialogue between an actor and a system. Represent the functionality provided by the system. Each use case in a use case diagram describes one and only one function in which users interact with the system. So in every use case diagram describes one and only one function. So in a use case diagram there might be lots of use cases. Try to understand these things from this statement. So but every use case describes only one function, not a multiple of functions, which users interact with the system. So may contain several paths that user can take while interacting with the system. Each path is referred to as scenario. So the actor might take different paths or different scenarios to communicate with the system, but there will be single path to a single use case. But there might be lots of use cases in a single use case diagram. But a use case only depicts one function at a time. So labeled using a descriptive verb noun phrase. Here you can see verb noun phrase represented by an oval. Label using descriptive noun or phrase, descriptive noun or phrase that is for actor, In case of use case, we can use verb, noun, phrase, but in case of actor, we need to use noun or phrase only, represented by a stick character. Relationship represent the communication between actor and use case, depicted by a line or double-headed arrow line. Double-headed arrow line, also called association relationship. Boundary. A boundary rectangle is placed around the perimeter of the system to show how the actors communicate with the system. So this is a boundary to communicate with the system. So this boundary depicts the system. So if the patient does not communicate, he will not provide any communication link within the through that system boundary. So here you can see there are various actors associated with this simple use case diagram. So I have mentioned earlier is that there might be lots of or many numbers of use cases in a single use case diagram, but only one use case will provide one function. Here patient star means 0 or more. Star means 0 or more. So 0 or more patient may interact with the make appointment use case. Management may interact with the produce schedule information. Doctor may produce the record availability. Use case diagram is a collection of actors, use cases and their communication. So a use case diagram is a collection of actors and use cases and their communications. So other type of relations for use cases are very important: generalization, include, extend. So we'll try to understand these three terms, three different relationships. This is a generalization relationship. So represented by a line and a hollow arrow from child to parent. Child use case and parent use case means if there are two use cases which are communicating, then we put a hollow arrow, a line and a hollow arrow, okay, to understand the relationship between two use cases. Here try to understand that this is not between any actor and the use case, but only between the use cases. So here you can see one use case is connected to another use case. Again, these two use cases connected with this use case. So those are generalization relationship. Again, there are two more thing included here: include and extend. Here you can see include and extend is marked here. So what is this? Include relationship represents the inclusion of the functionality of one use case within another. Arrow is drawn from the base use case to the used use case. So very important, represents the inclusion of the functionality of one use case within another. So here you can see this manage schedule will include the operation of this use case, because this manage schedule use case include these both use cases. Okay, so here it says inclusion of the functionality of these two use cases within another. So if we want to include some functionality from these base cases to the, here arrow is drawn from the base use case to the used use case. This is the used use case and this is the base use case. Base means the basic use case and this is the used use case. Okay, So this, you can see why it is mentioned as include, mean these things will be included in the manage schedule use case. This use case is the base use case, this is use case. So that is why we put that include relationship. Now what is extend relationship? It represents the extension of the use case to include optional functionality. Here you can see make an appointment is an optional functionality for update patient information. A arrow is drawn from the base use case to the used use case. Here this is the used use case and this is the base use case, and that is a optional, but inclusivism in case of include that is must, but in case of extend that is optional. We can include that use case in case of make appointment, and again we can include this make payment arrangement in case of make old patient app. Okay, make new patient will be include directly generalized connection with the make appointment. That is also a use case. That is also a use case. This use case is directly connected to make appointment, that is generalized connection or relationship or a communication. But this is an optional communication. Okay, and this is an inclusion communication. So here you can see again the same diagram to understand more. This is the appointment system. These are the actors. These are the links or communication. These are the use cases in the single use case diagram, and there are various relationship which might be extended, which might be included, or you can say extension or inclusion. Inclusion means those are must. Those are must. Which those functionality will be included in the use case of the used use case. So base use case functionality will be used in the used use case, but in case of extended relationship, base use case functionality will be optional to use in case of used use case. So what is the pros of use case relationship? Reduces redundancy in use cases, reduces complexity within a use case, but it may introduce also complexity to use case diagram. So relationships in the use case diagram might increase in case of use case diagram, but the complexity might reduce in case of a single use case. So use cases are primary vehicle for requirements captures. Use cases are described using the language of the customer. Use cases provide a conceptual delivery process. Use cases provide an easily understood communication mechanism. When requirements are traced, they make it difficult for requirements to fall through the cracks. Use cases provide a concise summary of what the system should do at an abstract level. But there are also difficulties in case of use cases. A functional decomposition, it is often difficult to make the transition from functional description to object description to class design. So we'll try to understand, or you try to go through more topics or more theory in this case, in case of use cases, and try to understand the use case design approach using different type of application. But main thing is that use cases specify functions. Architecture specifies the form. Use case and architecture must be balanced. So use case and architecture must be balanced. That is how it is showing in this diagram. Both should be balanced. Build. Suppose you can try this out. Build an use case diagram for a video rental system. Look and identify potential actors and use case tasks. Noun and verb may be helpful. So that is all about in this video. Try to go through it. If you have any question, please let me know. We'll try to resolve that over Google Meet and try to include one or few more topics for activity diagram or class diagram, which is very helpful and useful in case of software design or system development, because that you are going to develop in the current semesters or in the upcoming semester or in your job scenario. That's it. Thank you.